Hey!
Welcome back to Hotpocalypse, the show where we combine comedy, climate science, and a general feeling of doom.
Yeah, it's an exciting show today, Andy. We have a special guest, Kathy Kellie, one of my colleagues, an oceanographer and climate scientist.
One of you science types.
Yeah, one of us science types.
Excellent. We are going to discuss climate. We're going to discuss a little bit of politics, and we're going to discuss reasons why we might be about to die, y'all. Hotpocalypse.
Hotpocalypse.
He's a comic who's chronically depressed and thinks we're doomed. He's a renowned climate scientist who crunched the numbers and knows we're doomed. Together, they're hoping to have a good time till it's over and tell you, we're all gonna die! We're all gonna die! We're all gonna die!
Hotpocalypse.
Folks, thanks so much for being with us. We have a wonderful Hotpocalypse show for you.
It's gonna be fun.
We're going to talk a lot about what's in our future as a planet. And in the next half hour, our future is full of surprises and possibilities.
Indeed, indeed.
We've got, but before we get to our guest, and before we get to some of the good news for the week, let's talk about some of the reasons we're all screwed. Do we have a reason why we're all screwed this week? What's our top reason, Joshua?
We do. I think the top reason this week we're all screwed is that last week, the Trump administration decided to make a commission to attack the science of climate change, especially as it pertains to national security. So all these government agencies have said climate change is a huge threat to national security. So Trump is appointing a commission to prove those guys wrong, and they've headed it with this guy named William Happer.
Happer? I don't even know her.
He's a physicist. He kind of looks like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. But he's not a climate scientist.
Well, Joshua, tell me this. Why do you feel so strongly about him being a climate scientist? What's it mean to you?
Well, I'm a climate scientist.
What?
Yeah, I actually study global warming for NASA. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't speak for NASA on this show. They can speak for themselves.
But that's your employer.
That's my gig.
I actually am going to speak for the Coast Guard this week.
They need a good spokesman like you.
Yeah, I got things to say. We're going to let in all the fun drugs now, you guys. Oh, I got this. So we have this fellow, Happer.
And you're a comedian.
Oh, that's right. I am a comic. Josh makes his determinations through empirical science and data. I make my determinations by combining alcohol with antidepressants, but we both reach the same conclusion.
We do,
We're
yeah.
all doomed.
We're all going to die.
But tell me more about this Happer fellow. What gets under your skin about this?
Yeah, well, I think I took a lot of physics classes, and I knew a lot of physicists. Physicists are that field that always feel they can do your science better than you can, right? So there's a lot of physicists who are like, well, I'm going to be a climate scientist, but they don't study climate, and he's one of those.
Okay, so this is a guy who studies something other than climate, talking about climate. A classic case, I think, as the kids say, of not staying in your lane.
That's right. Yeah. It's like I think he studies laser beams and atoms, or he used to. Now he goes around saying that carbon dioxide is good for the planet.
A value judgment that I think a lot of us would disagree with as we slowly drown. So Josh, why is he doing this? Why? I think we can probably guess, but why is Trump doing this? Why is Happer doing this?
Well, the government has started to make policies based on the fact that climate change poses huge risks to the whole country. The military is talking about military installations that are getting threatened by sea level rise. There's war and famine that's driving people to migrate from places they used to live, and that causes political unrest. And all this is a threat to national security, but the Trump administration wants to tamp down that sentiment in the government, and so they're making this commission.
Pretty messed up. Messed up. But I'm a glass half full kind of guy, Josh. Is it possible that like facing an intramural team, this is just going to make the climate scientists better? You're being challenged by a jerk. You're going to take him on.
Maybe. I mean, it's going to make us angrier. That's definitely for sure. Right?
I got to say, I feel like I know Josh pretty well. He's not an angry guy by nature, but this ticks you off.
No, it really makes me mad.
I understand. It's like if Jimmy Fallon tried to do improv. Stay in your lane, dude.
Right. Come on, buddy.
He might improvise. I don't know.
You know, maybe it's a good time to talk to another climate scientist about this.
How can we do that, Josh?
I don't know. I think we have a remote connection
Holy
to
cow.
my colleague and friend, Kathy Kellie, who is, hey, Kathy, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good.
Thanks for joining us. So tell us a little bit
wonderful
about...
to be here.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your background. What have you been doing these last umpteen years with yourself?
Well, I've spent 30 years or so on NASA science teams, particularly on the one that you're involved with, the sea level team. I was also worked with winds, scatterometer winds, and sea surface temperatures, a bunch of stuff. A lot of research in the Atlantic circulation. Mostly looking at heat transport in the ocean.
Yeah, so we have all these satellites and things that NASA's launched that look back at the Earth and study things like how the sea level is changing, how the winds are changing, and stuff like that. So this is how we climate scientists kind of like know the things we know, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize how much NASA contributes to our understanding of climate. I mean, these observations are incredible, and they're global for the most part. It's a lot of information, and we are very concerned that it might be jeopardized.
And that's always interesting. I represent the idiots in this conversation. I don't have any satellites that I'm...
Thank God, Andy. They really need your help.
Satellite, no satellites. But it seems to me that a lot of folks in this discussion operate as if climate scientists are just making fancy guesses at this stuff. And I think it's educational for folks to realize how much data and how much research, it's an incredible amount that we have on this issue, right? That you guys have collected.
Yeah, well, think about like the sea level measurement. I know I talk to people and tell them, who do you think does that? I don't think they think about it. I said, well, it's NASA. And it comes out of JPL, and those are folks who do things like put people on the moon and the Mars rover and stuff. I mean, they're not exactly amateurs. And it's a 30 years worth of work.
So when people say this climate science stuff isn't rocket science, they're literally wrong.
Literally wrong. Yes.
Fair enough.
So, Kathy, tell us a little bit about your work in the Atlantic. I know you did a lot of research on looking at currents and how they change in the Atlantic. Tell us a little bit about, what your research found on that.
Oh, yeah. So, for years I worked with the Gulfstream, and specifically, and again, started right off with the altimeter, and looked at how the Gulfstream was transferring heat, and how it transported heat in the ocean and then transferred that heat to the atmosphere. So it had a role in extratropical storms. And then I worked with the Atlantic meridional overturning circulation.
Popularly known as the Conveyor Belt, right?
Right, the heat conveyor belt. It also conveys salt. And that was sort of my most recent work. I looked at the relationship between the...
Oh, we got a little glitch there, but let me just, that's a good chance for me to break in as a member of the idiot American community. You say popularly known as the conveyor belt. But make it a little more popular. What does that exactly mean?
So this set of currents carries heat around in the Atlantic. So Kathy mentioned the Gulfstream. That's the big current that goes northward up the East Coast. And it's very warm. And it carries this warm water into the North Atlantic, where it releases it out to the atmosphere. And so literally, the ocean is affecting the climate. And I think Kathy's back. You want to talk about the overturning a little bit?
Yeah, so the theory is that, the heat you carry, the overturning circulation carries salt northward and carries fresh water from the Arctic southward. And there are probably the most popular theory about why this would undergo changes is that there's something like a lot of fresh water in the north that's kind of slowing it down. And using some satellite observations and a bunch of in situ observations, notably from Argo, we just showed that in this particular recent event, that particular idea about how it worked didn't work. In fact, it was getting saltier in the north as the circulation slowed down. So it's a lot we don't know. It's a lot we do know, but we don't totally understand that heat circulation.
And Kathy, again, I'm the Larry King in this occasion. I don't know what I'm talking about to the people I'm interviewing. Can you tell us what are the practical implications for folks? What does that mean for folks who are saying, how does this affect me?
Well, there was quite a bit of a kind of alarm associated with some rapid changes in that circulation. And while it probably has weather effects in terms of if you don't carry as much heat north, you don't get as much heat coming through the atmosphere to Europe. But it does seem to be not as big or maybe as abrupt as people were concerned it might be. And in the context of the overall global warming, probably any effects from that circulation would be overwhelmed eventually by the general rise in temperature from global warming.
So, Kathy, that's fast. I think we have a comment from someone.
Oh, from our viewers. Again, we're on the Being Liberal website. They're kind enough to host this show. If you go to the Facebook page for Being Liberal, leave a comment or a question. We're going to try and get to them as we go here in real time. We got one right now. What do we got here?
So the internet cut out. We had to start a new stream, so I can't pull up the comment. But the comment was asking, what would be the temperature if humans did not exist?
Oh,
wow!
The question is, what would the temperature be like if humans did not exist?
Wow, that sounds like a question for scientists. Oh. I'll be here with the dick jokes. What do you got, guys?
It would be a lot cooler.
Go for it, Josh.
It would be a lot cooler. Yeah, I mean, what the recent research says is that the planet's warmed up by about 1.5 degrees because of human activities, and that's Celsius, right? Or is it Fahrenheit? I always forget. It's about 1.5 degrees. So
it's Celsius, yeah.
Celsius, right. So that means it's closer to like 3 degrees Fahrenheit. And so without us here, the whole planet would be about 3 degrees Fahrenheit cooler than it is today. And it would have been sort of like the climate we've had for the 10,000 years before we started messing with it. Right?
So there was a sort of stability to the climate back in the day, and we've disrupted that stability. We don't know where this train ends.
Right. What were you going to say, Kathy?
Well, there was a period, there was a modeling study recently, which was very interesting, and said that we did experience these kinds of changes in the past. That would be the Great Permian Extinction, in which most of life didn't make it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not...
So the last time there was this much craziness, almost everything on Earth died. That's what you're saying. Yeah, well, it was where this model said we were about 20% of the way there now, if we keep going.
Wow.
So that probably affects everybody.
Mass extinction sounds bad.
Indeed. Yeah. I mean, because it probably involves us being extinct too.
Yeah. Well, this is one of my favorite. People said they worry about the fate of the planet, but I think that's misplaced. I mean, look at Mars. Mars is good. Now, nothing lives there, but nothing. The planet's good.
The planet, still turning.
It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's good, and the Earth will be fine. We may not fare so well.
Kathy, that's so interesting because I feel like you and Josh are both doing a remarkable job of taking the science that you study and communicating it to the general public. And that seems like a great example of poor communication that we've been experiencing as part of this movement, perhaps muddying the waters more than it should be. Is there a preferred way that you would describe that? We're not worried about the planet, we're worried about...
Us.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah, 100%. That's a good question. Kathy, tell us a little bit about your choices now that since you've retired, I believe, after a very long, illustrious career as a scientist. What are you doing now?
Oh, well, I was planning to make some kind of interesting, fairly lightweight films. But that changed with the election. Like everybody else, the election changed everything. And so my colleague, Luann Thompson, convinced me that I really should be using my film interests and film skills to do something about climate change. Wow. So I said, well, most of climate change films are documentaries, and I do fiction. She says, do climate fiction. Thought, Okay,
That's exciting. All right, great.
I'll do climate fiction.
Yeah, well, let's.
And then I discovered that it's a genre, cli-fi.
Nice, nice.
Oh, I'm so bummed I didn't think of cli-fi. That's good stuff. That's good stuff, Kathy.
I didn't think of it. It's look it up on Wikipedia. It's a thing.
Oh, it's a thing. All right, I love it.
It is a thing. Yeah.
Okay, so and I think we've got a clip that we're going to show in a second here of Kathy's work, a recent project that she's been doing. And before we get to that, can you guys just talk for a second about that moment that Kathy was just referring to, the election? I know that in my personal little California bubble, we were all very upset about what happened in the election, and it sent some shockwaves through our community. It must have been different for you guys because you're so involved in government research and the way this applies to our larger fates. What was it like for you guys?
Kathy?
I hunkered down in a hotel room and I started writing. I said, this has got to change. This doesn't work. And so that's when I started doing the screenplay for our web series. And every time I turned on the news, thank you, NPR, I got more stuff, more material from my web series.
Yeah, I mean,
It was constant.
It was definitely shocking. I mean, there was a lot of fear, I think, in the science community that the administration would come down really hard on climate science. And, at least, again, I don't speak on behalf of NASA, but my observations are that NASA fared okay, but places like the EPA have really had a very hard time because they've put a lot of pressure to ignore the science conclusions.
It seems like the EPA is becoming similar to the Drug Enforcement Agency in that they're becoming against the thing they're named after, right?
Yeah, right.
Trying to combat the climate itself,
Right.
Or the environment itself. I believe we have another counter question from our audience. What do we got? Producer Mike, what's up?
Ooh.
How long do we have? Are we past the mark? Is
Yeah.
the question. That is kind of the question.
It is.
Cutting to the quick.
is.
Yeah.
Right.
AOC says 12 years in the Green New Deal. That's sort of like the tipping point that they've marked. Do you guys have, and it's a very big question, do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, Kathy?
Well, yeah, we're certainly approaching irreversible consequences, definitely. But the thing is that it's not like we can do it or not do it. We have to stop whatever we can because it will just get worse. It's not like, it's a step and then we're in bad climate. It will continue to deteriorate unless we do something about it. So there's no, I'm not sure what actually tipping point means exactly. I think the heat that we have in the ocean is not going away. So.
Yeah, I think this is a really good point. I think, we think of it as like all of a sudden we're going to pass this threshold. And there are such thresholds in the climate where, things get worse on their own, even if you stop forcing it. But it's a continuum. It's not how long do we have, it's how bad do we want to let it get.
That's a really interesting point. There's this sense, I think, again, in the idiot American community, that we have this, there's going to be this step, it's like, oh, that's what did it. That's what put us too far.
Toast.
Whereas if you ask the people who died in Northern California in those wildfires, that tipping point already happened.
Right.
You can't ask them, they're dead.
There's
That's how
definitely
life
effects that are already in the pipeline that we're already going to experience.
And I believe we have another, again, on the Being Liberal Facebook site, we're looking at those comments and questions. Please leave one. We got another one. What's up? 2 beta. Oh, I think someone is saying we are cucked.
We're cooked.
No, cucked.
Cucked.
Cucked, yes, cuckolded, in the conservative speak. Hi, trolls. We just want to say there are trolls that lurk on the Being Liberal website. We love them.
Come hang out with us. Yes,
Come hang out
please.
with us.
Make fun of us. We'll make fun of you. Yeah, it'll be good.
It's a symbiotic relationship with these trolls. So yes, we are totally cucked. We're very beta.
You had to explain that one to me. I didn't get it. I'm sorry. I'm a scientist.
I didn't get it.
You need to spend more
I didn't get
time
it
in bad Twitter land. That's what you can hear about cucked. Yes, we're very cucked individuals, and we are slaves to our big climate who funds us and our efforts.
I mean, we are slaves to the climate we live in a very real way. I mean, it determines a lot of like where we get our water, our crops, our energy, all that stuff. So
breathing.
Yeah, I mean, unless you have another planet in your pocket, we gotta live on this one.
I'm just happy to see you.
Okay.
Okay. Kathy, we've been talking, and again, I think Josh and Kathy both really represent sort of a vanguard movement in the climate scientist community, I'm guessing, because it tends to be sort of insular and intramural. You guys are breaking out and expressing ideas to the broader community.
We're trying to make good talk to people. Yes.
And so, Kathy, let's talk about your film a little bit.
Okay. So the idea that we had was that there are a lot of documentaries out, they're excellent documentaries, and they explain a lot about what's going on, a lot of factual information, and they can be very appealing. But it's not clear that there's a very big audience. There's an element of preaching to the choir in the documentary community, and I thought maybe we can reach out in some other way. There's a lot of distrust of experts. And maybe there's a dehumanization of scientists. So I thought, well, let's try fiction, and we'll do my favorite genre, which is thrillers. And excellent. I thought, well, cool. the other problem we have is that people think that climate change is 20, 30 years away. And I kind of wanted to get across that there are crises. And the one that I came up with was a connection between the heat in the ocean and sea level and hurricanes. If we don't know how much heat's in the ocean, we can't accurately predict a hurricane. Suppose we lost our sea level observations, and you're now using sea level to make an estimate of heat in the ocean. And suppose we got that wrong.
Okay,
we would have a really botched hurricane forecast.
I think that's what they call a dramatic pivot point in a screenplay. That's a sign.
Yeah.
So, Kathy, I think we're going to watch a trailer in a second here. After that, we're going to get to some good news on the climate because we need some. Will you stick around for us after the
I'll be here.
Trailer
I'm here.
And talk to us about this?
Awesome.
Sure, and if anybody has questions
about
it.
Let's see what Kathy's working on. Let's roll that trailer.
Cool.
There's a tropical storm forming in the Atlantic.
Did you get the heat potential maps to Vancouver?
Who's responsible for this sea level hoax?
NASA, sir, in partnership with France.
They was gonna pick up speed over all those warm spots.
What if the hurricane forecast was wrong because the data was missing or was being sabotaged?
We forecast Layla as a category 3, but it's a 5.
Our map showed the ocean cooling off just before the hurricane hit.
That's strange. The cooling should happen after the hurricane.
Get that NASA guy in here right now.
I decided to study oceanography so I could help stop climate change. But now I'm being blamed for hurricane deaths.
The president is threatening to cut funding to states working with foreign governments.
If the government's the problem, who's going to fix it?
Who's Kim?
You're not part of this resistance, are you? Well, fix it.
Exciting.
Good stuff. Excellent. So, Kathy, is this a completed work that we can see at some point?
No, actually, we've just completed the pilot, and we're working on episode 2. I can't release the pilot just yet because it's in the film festival circuit.
Oh, excellent.
Exciting.
But probably in early summer, we'll be releasing the pilot.
I think we have another question from the audience. If we have a second,
Again, I can't pull it up because we lost internet connection.
What's up, producer Mike?
What is the future of the Gulfstream?
Oh, what is the future of the Gulfstream? That's an excellent question.
Scientist.
Can we talk about the Gulfstream for a second?
Sure. There's been a slow change in the overturning circulation, but I don't think that it applies to the Gulfstream. The Gulfstream seems to be kind of, carrying on.
Oh. Right. Yeah. It's funny because a lot of people put together the Gulfstream and the Conveyor Belt, right? But they're really different things. The Gulfstream is kind of part of it, but the whole conveyor belt, the overturning circulation, as we call it in science land, it's kind of its own thing. And so the Gulfstream is there because the wind is blowing and the Earth is rotating. So neither one of those things are going to change. It's going to stay there. But the strength of the overturning circulation might change. And so it can have kind of like backward effects on the temperature of the ocean and the storminess in different places. Even hurricane generation can be affected by the overturning. But the Gulfstream is going to be fine.
And just again for the, as Larry King, what can you talk a little bit about that overturning? I'm not sure I understand what that concept is exactly.
Yeah. So, well, as Kathy mentioned earlier, and she can talk to this as well, the overturning is this kind of set of currents that carry warm water north in the Atlantic. They release a bunch of heat to the atmosphere, and then that water sinks. It gets very cold and very heavy, and it sinks, and then spreads back out through the deep ocean, actually all the way around the world.
Great. And north, that's where Santa lives.
Yes.
Okay, I got it.
For the moment, until his house melts.
No, I got this.
And then he's toast.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for that trailer. Kathy, please stick around. We're about to talk about some good news. Let's talk about some...
Or well, do you want to talk any more about the film or where it's going to be?
Oh yes, let's see. What's the link? How can people check this out?
Well, they can link to our website, which is an unlikelyinsurgency.com. That's our name of our project.
Unlikelyinsurgency.com.
Yes.
That's the name of the project, yeah.
And
there's some more information there, but unlikelyinsurgency.com.
Okay.
The unlikely insurgency is scientists are insurgent. And that's sort of unlikely because scientists don't usually get into politics.
So like we're like the rebels in Star Wars?
We are indeed.
Awesome.
And you're in there, Josh.
All right.
Josh,
I gotta
is
say,
in there. He doesn't
we got
look
some
like
unlikely
Josh.
sideburns. Anything can happen with these climate scientists. There's a lot of options. Kathy, we're going to talk right now about something called FOMO, or fear of missing out, as the kids call it. And these are the good news stories about climate that we can talk about. Josh, what are we looking at right now? What's the topic?
This is really interesting, and I don't know, it's kind of gross too.
Yeah.
They can grow meat without animals. I guess yeast. They use yeast, so they or something like that, or soybean. I don't know. There's some bacteria.
Yes,
right?
Okay. It's a Business Insider article that talked about this. They use a culture to grow cells of meat in the lab, and then they have ways to striate it with fat, just like we like, and produce meat products that don't hurt the planet. They just arise out of petri dishes.
That's scary.
Well, it is one of those things like culturally, I'm from Indiana. If there's not meat on my plate, it just doesn't feel like a meat to me.
Right, it's not dinner.
Yeah. It's appealing. I accept it, but that's the way I am. And this would help people like me kill myself slowly with meat without killing the planet.
Right, because animals take a lot of resources to grow and be slaughtered. To grow a pound of meat takes like 100 gallons of water over the life of the cow and so forth. It's really energy intensive. It takes a lot of resources, a lot of time, and a lot of cows. Apparently, people are worried like if we all ate petri dish meat, what would happen to the cows?
They'd live happy lives.
They'd live happy lives.
I'm from Indiana. Cows are adorable. I can vouch for this.
That's right.
But so there's this CPAC and other things that are happening right now. You're seeing some of these really brilliant fellows like Sebastian Gorka saying they're going to take away our hamburgers. That's my Sebastian Gorka. Right. They're going to take away our hamburgers. No, we're not. Many of us eat hamburgers, but we'd love to replace them with something that's not going to kill us all.
Right. Kathy, are you a vegetarian by any chance?
I'm not, but I don't eat hamburgers.
She doesn't eat no hamburgers. So this whole petri dish hamburger.
Four-legged animals.
Okay.
No four-legged animals. And I don't miss hamburgers at all.
No,
I don't like hamburgers.
A work in progress. And along those lines, we've got another story that was really interesting. I think this was in Newsweek. The THC is the active product, the active chemical in marijuana.
Right.
You don't know about this. I'll tell you all about it later.
Just
it's a delightful chemical, I think, and it's being raised now in an unusual way.
Also in a petri dish.
In a petri dish. Perhaps the solution to all our problems is in a petri dish.
Yes.
Instead of yeast producing alcohol, as it has for many millennia, and to delicious effect, it's now being used to produce THC and CBD, the active ingredients in marijuana, which I call the delightful chemicals.
It's amazing.
It really is. He doesn't speak for NASA. I speak for the DEA. We're letting them all in. They're all good.
Yeah, I was reading that article, and it said it's interesting because it has the same implications too as the cows, because people actually use an enormous amount of land and power. I read that 3% of California's energy actually goes to growing marijuana. 3%.
That's it? You hang out in different crowds.
And the rest goes to Google.
That is remarkable, right? Like between that and Bitcoin, that's pretty much 80% of our energy by my math.
That's right.
Wow.
Kathy, were you going to chime in?
No, I was just saying the rest of that energy is going to Google storage disks.
Oh, that's true.
Absolutely.
Right.
NorCal, they got
and
all things out of there.
it better stay on, because if they lose my files, I got some things to talk to them about.
Oh, I don't know anything without Google. That's
right.
my lifeline.
Yeah, well.
And this last bit of FOMO that we've got here is a bit of a mixed bag.
It's interesting. So they're building roads out of used plastic. And in fact, Dow Chemical,
the friends of the environment,
right,
clearly.
They make all the plastic, is actually making roads out of used plastic. The idea being that plastic, those plastic bags and things that are all winding up in the ocean and killing the fish, wind up on the roads instead.
And that's good.
Yeah, I mean, apparently a plastic road can last like 3 or 4 times as long as a traditional asphalt road. So it actually saves building materials in the long run, and the plastic doesn't wind up, killing the ocean.
And it's interesting. I guess the reason I say this is a mixed bag is that it combines a few different issues. One is I'm suspicious of things that come out of Dow Chemical. Another is that we're building more roads that more cars can travel down, which seems like, at best, a mixed bag for the environment.
Yeah, right. I mean, unless they're electric cars, we're definitely building more. But, even the transportation network still has to be updated.
Sure.
A regular road only, how many potholes have you seen in your
my road?
Right? Yeah, right.
How dare you?
I'm sorry.
Outrageous.
Write your city council members. Katie, please. But yeah, these things, roads are we don't think about it. You think of roads as like you build it and it's there forever, but actually they require constantly being renewed. You have to rebuild the road as it deteriorates, and so we're always going to be building roads, even if they're not new roads.
True that. And I suppose that this sort of infrastructure is going to be much less debilitating to our environment than the one that we already have.
We hope.
Yeah.
We hope.
Leaving up for our good friends at Dow.
Kathy, what were you going to say?
I'm just saying, you'd want to make sure that using the plastic in the roads doesn't encourage people to not recycle or to buy more plastic, thinking, oh, it's okay now. And also, what do we gain by not using those other materials? What's the trade-off? For asphalt, what does asphalt cost us environmentally?
Right.
And that releases greenhouse gases in the production of asphalt, I believe.
That's right. So these things are like big, they're big problems, and they're hard to get your hands all the way around. But at least people are starting to think of solutions, because there's a big, anti-bag movement.
Oh yes. They're deciding on that in Canada right now. Hey, let me throw a sticky wicket in here. As the Larry King of this conversation, who doesn't know what he's talking about, let me throw this at you, knowledgeable types. I have a theory that recycling is kind of BS, in the sense that we are transferring what should be a corporate and governmental responsibility onto people individuals that are made to feel like they're doing something productive, that if I separate my cans from my plastics, that then I am doing what I need to do to solve the climate crisis, when what we really need is direct action and protest and the sorts of things that cause enormous change. Tell me I'm wrong.
Kathy?
No, I think elements of that make sense. There is a kind of false idea about going on, especially with the thing with China not taking as much recyclable material, that you've done some good by recycling. But I heard of a business that's now going to do various things like what we used to be delivered with milk. So they would deliver all sorts of products that normally come in plastic containers in glass containers, and you put out your glass container and get that. Now that seems like an actual solution.
Right, because you don't get to use the plastic in the first place.
Make consumer products great again.
Yeah. Oh. We have a question.
Well, this is exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. What happens to the new material, like plastic, when these roads deteriorate? Yes. Now that's the big question, right? You know, you put the plastic in the asphalt, but you didn't really take it out of the environment. I mean, you took it out of the ocean and you took it out of the landfill. That's good, but now it's on the road. So what happens? I guess nobody knows, because you have to build one and then see what happens, right?
I mean, it's really an excellent question, and it would seem to me that, like, at least that deterioration isn't happening in the ocean and forming those little pellets that the fish can eat, right?
Right. But will they form little pellets that field mice?
Mongooses that it goes in the food chain and we eat it, and then I'm pooing glass again.
Good question. I don't think we know yet. That's one of the reasons why they do these things kind of, they do it, they build a couple, they see how it goes, they build some others, they see how it goes, but you have to look at the long-term impacts too, and it takes a while. So it's one of those things, we're not going to fix it overnight.
Right.
Ooh, we're getting all kinds of...
Oh my goodness, we're being flooded with questions. We love it.
This isn't about being liberal. Everyone must breathe and eat.
I think that is an excellent, in a rational world.
Yes.
It's interesting, if you talk to someone, say, from Canada, a lot of folks from Canada will say, or Europe, they will say, it's weird to me that you Americans treat this as a political issue when it's a scientific issue.
Yeah. I think Trump should appoint a committee to see whether it's necessary to breathe. They can just...
say... I never inhale, by the way. That's my. So, Kathy, any thoughts on that? This intersection of politics and climate is necessary, of course, right now, because it exists and we have to address it. But it's not really a natural fit, right?
I don't know. Maybe in the U.S. it's always been a natural fit. I mean, we had big wars about the Clean Air and Clean Water Act, and we had the same sides being drawn. We've gotten very extreme. That's no question about that.
Yeah, this sort of bipolar nature of our politics is really bleeding over to an issue that is potentially going to doom us all.
Yeah, but it's an old argument that we've been having in this country for a long time, and probably will continue to have for a long time.
That and hobo chili. 23 Skidoo.
Kathy, thank you so much for joining us today. It was our pleasure to talk to you. I understand you're going to be screening your film sometime eventually?
You mean today?
Today. Yes. There's a private viewing which doesn't violate any of the film.
Right. We're just showing it to scientists to get their feedback on whether this is a productive way to engage people.
Yeah,
and that's the point of this. So and then
you're going to get to see it.
Yep.
Knowing what I know about scientists, you are going to get some long, detailed reviews.
I've got some pretty good science advisors, so
Awesome.
I think we're in pretty good shape on the science end.
That's super awesome.
Cool. Well, I think that's our show today, Andy.
Hey, Kathy, thank you so much. Being liberal, thank you so much. Viewers, thank you so much. Josh, Couple notes, couple things.
Oh, God.
I'm picky. No, yeah, we really appreciate having you, and please like Hotpocalypse's Facebook page. We got Twitter, SoundCloud. We're probably on LinkedIn. I don't know.
We could be. Mike, get to work on that.
Come on, producer Mike. Thank you, producer Mike. Thank you, producer Kim, and thank you so much to you guys for being here. We'll be here next week again, and let's hope we all live that long.
Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Yeah, I know.